Is that later tonight? So you've got Belgium and Tess has got England.
I think Neil Harris is Brazil.
They won last time?
World Cup? Yeah.
Yes.
Got any spare guitar stands down in your corridor?
Yes, we have. They're in the store cupboard. Dan should be in the office.
Okay.
He'll, yeah.
Vado a prendere le persone.
Proviamo a... Ah, parliamo. Ah, salve. Hello. It's been starting the Feedback Cafe. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. I know you want to come to join with us. Venga, venga.
Let's make the circle a little bit smaller. Se sei serena, ne parla solo lui, io e lei. Françoise, are you with us? ¿Estás con nosotros? Get ready for make some questions. So hi everybody once again, this is the Feedback Cafe. Welcome to who wasn't here in the previous days. We are Sotterraneo, the three of us, and these two very elegant guys. You're gonna learn later why they're so elegant. And I don't know him, I don't know who he is. And in the Feedback Cafe, we simply facilitate the discussion and the dialogue about the works that we've seen yesterday. So we've seen some pretty, let's say, powerful works. And so we're, Marco, are you listening? No, he's not. So we're going to deal with the bad guys that tonight made some kind of violent stuff, and we'd like to discuss all of it, and we are starting, I guess, with the first show of yesterday. Oh, two very important things, guys. Whenever you talk, please use the mic, because we are streaming live on Facebook, and they won't hear you if you don't use the mic correctly. And the second thing, every company has 20 minutes each, maximum 20 minutes each, to explain themselves and their works. I hope it will be enough. So I'm going to put an alarm, and when it sounds, it means we have only a few minutes left to talk with you, okay? It's nothing against you, it's just a matter of times. The boss told me to do that. Okay, so let's start with the first company that we saw yesterday. and it's not actually a company. The show was Someone Loves You, Drive with Care, and it's Tom Cassani, right?
Hi.
Hi. If you would like to explain your work and your piece, like also the full-length piece, how it is going on, and to present obviously yourself and your work, who you are.
Cool. I'm Tom Cassani. I did perform the first show last night. It's called Someone Loves You, Drive with Care, and the show itself is 45 minutes in total length, so I've cut 15 minutes of it for Bee Festival and reworked some bits to kind of make that half-an-hour version kind of a bit more consistent, and added some things. So the full version has, I suppose, some of the texts in it are a bit longer, and there's 2 more kind of illusions. For anyone who didn't see the show, it's basically a show that is a kind of study on how deception can work in performance through a kind of series of actions that appear both authentic and inauthentic at the same time. So I have a background in illusion, and I work a lot with deception in the show through kind of spoken text, as well as kind of things I do to myself, kind of actions with an animal trap, some needles, a hammer and a nail, a meat hook, and these sorts of things. So all the work I make kind of has elements of deception in it, and I kind of am purposely avoiding the word magic, because magic has lots of association with it that I'm constantly trying to kind of remove from the performance work I make, because there's things in magic that I'm really fascinated in, but I don't want to be a magician, and I don't want to make work that is a magic show. So kind of adding in this word deception as a kind of placeholder for that. This is the first kind of full-length show that I've made and performed. It was kind of born out of 3 short performances that I kind of did as experiments. So there's a bit in the performance where I hold someone's hand and cry and speak a piece of text. That existed as a 10-minute performance for just 2 people. Some of the kind of demonstrations or actions just existed as routines that I had learnt, and the texts existed on their own, and they all came together to try and make this show that covered a spectrum of deception. I am working on a new show at the moment called, at the moment it's called I Promise You That Tonight, which is about miracles, and about miracles as great feats of deception. I've started working more with sideshow stuff, which I suppose is more kind of body-based action things, as opposed to kind of illusions. I also work as a consultant magician for other performers and theatre makers. So if they want an illusion or an impossibility in their show, then we collaborate to make that happen. I also perform kind of short form, I suppose, cabaret works that are more suitable for kind of small stages in kind of club venues, and I do that in and around London. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we usually like this to be a discussion, but we usually put the first question to break the ice, right? I think it's yours. It's mine? Oh, we changed. Right. So as long as it's been a violent night, let's say, it's been 3 shows at least, except for the lady over there, but the others were somehow working about violence or shock. The question I was going to make you is, what's your point in using violence on yourself? I mean, you were trying somehow to create some sort of a shock in the people, weren't you? I mean, I felt like the reaction that somebody was going like, oh no, my God, don't do that. And I wasn't like that. I was like, okay, please do that. I wanna see how you survive this. Okay, I was totally ready to put you in danger because I'm a bad guy, just like you and blah blah blah. But so I'm curious about what's the point in making violence or possible violence to yourself and searching for the reaction towards the audience.
I mean, I wouldn't call it violence. I mean, I'm not interested in causing myself pain, and I don't want to do that on stage, and I don't think the people thinking people watching me in pain. I'm not. I mean, that's obviously a byproduct of the things I'm doing, but that's not. I'm not interested in causing myself physical damage on stage for your entertainment. That's not something I want to do. So the things that I do on the show are things. So putting the meat hook through my skull, I saw someone doing that, a picture of someone doing that, a video of someone doing it, and I think that looks amazing. I think the image of that is unbelievable and really lovely. I want to be able to recreate that image for other people and for myself. So I spent 2 years figuring out how to do that. And then once I did that, I was like, so how can I do that on stage in a way that tries to make that feeling that I had when I first saw that picture for other people? And so I think there's elements of like, so the nail and the nose is like an old sideshow stunt that lots of street performers do. And they do that to shock people. They do that to kind of get people in. And I think I could do that, you know, and kind of do it with my face painted black and white to rock and roll music and make it all a bit like, and I think actually it's far more, it does something else if you just sit there and clean it really slowly and you just go ahead and just do it as like slowly and steadily without saying anything, and that does a different thing, I think. I think that creates ambiguity about whether it's authentic or not. It's also kind of, you kind of know what that is, but it's also being done in a way that you might not have come across it before. So I think it's not about just getting a reaction from people. It's about making you think about the fact that you are not being asked to react, really, or you're allowed to react in a way, you're allowed to choose how you react. And I think it's about being reminded that that the action itself is fascinating enough. It doesn't have to have anything else around it. And yeah, maybe that, yeah, I think.
Okay.
Just a thought about this. I mean, the thing is, to me, watching the show, this constant tension during the show made me very uncomfortable. So the thing that you say, that you somehow show things and you don't want to shock and maybe, yes, put violent music and stuff, to me, it's the opposite. Like, doing so, I was all the way like this, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Not that I was shocked, but you got my attention completely, if you know what I mean.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's not that I don't, I mean, saying that I don't want to shock you, obviously I know that that's what's going to happen, and I'm not trying to kind of say, kind of like that, but I think you know what, like, say if I were to do the kind of magic tricks with cards or coins or things, like, you know what that is, so you know how you're meant to react to that. But if I just do the thing kind of in a really kind of deadpan way, you don't know how you're meant to react to that. So you're constantly riding this thing of like, is this actually happening? Or is he faking it? Or is this real? Or, not. And it's that bit that you're kind of like sat in between, kind of going, how am I meant to deal with this, is the bit that I'm really trying to kind of stay on. And that's to do with kind of creating authenticity through inauthenticity, through authentic deception.
Yeah, and it really worked on me. So, does anybody have any question or comment? Yep.
Hi, Tom. I talked to Tom yesterday. I've seen Illusionist before while I was eating dinner, and I have to say, I didn't like it then, but I thought Tom's was really good. I sat at the front, so got a bird's eye view. I want to know what you did with the needles you put in your mouth, except I'm really glad you didn't stick them through your eye. And did the people at the back of in the seating actually see what I could see? Because although the hook was through and I could see it was through, could the people at the back, and would having a camera when you're next going to perform, so that you could have a screen? Oh, you could see.
Yeah. I'm afraid you could, I agree.
And I didn't find it frightening, and I thought when you were doing the speaking, whether it was recorded or you're doing it yourself, was really good, because it gave you that time for your own imagination to play some more.
I mean,
so,
yeah.
Go on.
Well, imagination is great, because then, I mean, not doing the whole needle thing, I think And then everyone's just left wondering where they are and what's going to happen. And I think that's, I mean, if they do reappear, then that kind of is a conclusion for everyone, and that that somehow kind of makes it allowed, or makes it kind of, you know, it completes it, and that kind of then tells you, oh, it is a trick, oh, it is theatre, oh, it is that. And not doing that, I think, doing half a trick, I think, is, I'm more interested in doing that than showing off, than kind of going, look, I can do this illusion, and you don't know how it's done, isn't that clever? Which is maybe why I've kind of rejected doing the table magic stuff.
It's 24 hours almost,
Yeah.
I'm still wanting to know what you do with the
Yeah, I think that's the biggest room I've done it in. So as far as the back row is concerned, I mean, yeah, I just basically did the show in that room, and I was like, well, it's this big, I'm going to have to just do it. And I come to the front every time I do the hook, but I think somehow using a camera might. I mean, I quite like that everything's made out of wood and metal, and you know, it's just all kind of stripped back. And I think adding an element of technology kind of might somehow. Yeah, takes that into a different thing. But I mean, yeah, it's about finding a way that these actions can play to a room that big, but still keep the kind of integrity of them being so stripped back.
And the drippy, where the water was dripping, was that so it distracted you?
So the ice is a new thing. That's the first time that's been in this show. For Bee Festival, we added that in. But we've talked about using ice, or I've talked about using ice in the show for a while, because there's this theme of icebergs and melting. So that's the first time we've ever had, I've ever had a block of ice in a theatre with the lights on. So, I mean, that was just kind of what that was. I mean, if I have a chance to kind of have another go at maybe figuring out how to signpost that a bit more, maybe get a clearer block of ice, maybe have, you know, something on the floor where the dripping kind of happen, that's kind of lit in a way that's more present, perhaps. I'm kind of interested in doing that, but the tree and the ice was a kind of way of kind of bookending the show, and also the space as well.
Just two questions, actually. In the program book, there's some reference made to vintage US circus.
Yeah.
So I would be interested what this tradition is, because I don't know it. And the other question would be, because you're not putting like metal music and so on, but what you put is more like, I don't know, your discourse that you bring, like about, there's a lot about death, there's about criminal, about this kind of, I don't know, inheriting stuff, family stuff. So, and we didn't talk about it yet, so what are you telling there, and what's the motivation, or what do you want to...
Yeah, so the sideshow, the word sideshow comes from when the circus used to come to town, there'd be the big top and there'd be the small top, which is the small tent next to the big tent. And the small tent would be called the sideshow because it's on the side, literally, and you would pay $1 or $2 to go into the sideshow and see a two-headed goat, a sword swallower, a fire breather, or someone hammer nails up their nose, or someone bite the head off a chicken. And that would be there because they're shows that don't take a massive setup. They can just rock into town, and then they get the money quick, but they also then draw you in to then go see the big show, the big circus show. So it's called sideshow from that, and sideshow would often have acts that would include people doing things like putting their hands in animal traps, doing things to their body, things that kind of can happen on a small stage, maybe smaller than this. So those kinds of stunts are kind of historically associated with sideshow, and some magic illusions kind of come from a lineage of that. So the thing of swallowing needles, those kind of more body-based illusions historically have threads kind of back to the sideshow. And there's also inherently elements of deception involved in that, both in that they would have kind of almost false advertising. So P.T. Barnum and all of the kind of history of freaks as well, unfortunately, all of that would be, so they would have illustrated people, which are people covered in tattoos. They would have, so the way they would entice people in is kind of through false advertising. I'm trying to think of an example, like bearded women, or kind of, you know, yeah, kind of all of this bizarre stuff. We're all kind of bundled up in that. So there's inherently deception involved in all of those stunts, and also kind of realness as well. Like sword swallowing is very real. All of these stunts are kind of real in a way that there's no artifice, but there's lies involved. The kind of Texan stuff. Okay, yeah. So the Texan stuff is all because of kind of a lot of those texts come from kind of a place of writing, from trying to be really honest and really truthful and talk about things that I actually do think about, thinking about my brother, thinking about my father, and these things kind of about Sobenine, kind of the hand, and just simply the hand is like a deceptive thing, and you can do lots of stuff with just that, and those kind of more poetic texts are kind of things that I really do think about those things. I really have been thinking about those things for a long time, and I really think it is interesting if we all just think about those things for a moment. And that was me really trying to just be like totally authentic, kind of through voice and through just things that I've written, and then layering that on top of actions that are really inauthentic, and seeing what happens when those two things are aligned.
And we would like to know if you have a question for the audience about... Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's not really a question. I just wanted to say, actually, it's so nice to hear somebody talk so well about what they do. I really enjoyed that. You talk very fluently. And I think it made me appreciate what you did rather more than actually watching it, so that was interesting. And just in reference to what our friend here said about the block of eyes, I thought that was quite clever, because you think, is it really dripping? What is this? I mean, I wasn't really, so it was just another intriguing moment. So the other thing is, as I'm sure everybody knows, the 250th anniversary of circus, isn't it, this year? Something which amazingly was invented by an Englishman. So that was very interesting, your explanation of what a sideshow was. I didn't know. So, hey-ho, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
That really was my not question.
Thank you.
Hi, hello. It made me think of Christ. It's a bit weird. But because of the nail and the wood, and because your hand bled and then your eyes were bleeding, oh, not bleeding, that's what I saw. So I started to see, I started to have this sort of really weird kind of darker version of that. Does that ever occur to you, or has anyone else ever come up with that?
So the new show is kind of almost, it's kind of about that. So there is kind of nods to things, but kind of trying not to be like totally explicitly that's about that. So the block of wood and the nail, it only really occurred to me that was what that was, kind of later down the line. And then there's like bits in the text where I go, I did some writing once, it was not about Jesus, it was not about his dad. So there's like a line in there that references the fact that I kind of have thought about that, but then decided not to write about that. But then it kind of makes that bit about that. So, and then the blood on the hand, is very much a kind of stigmata reference, but is also kind of maybe to do with guilt, and is also kind of also maybe, has something gone wrong, and also because of the trap. So there is kind of, I suppose, a bit of a entangled imagery of that, but I suppose I really didn't want to make it, thematically about that. But that is, I'm aware of that, and that's happened,
I wasn't thinking, I think I was thinking at the time, but it was later that it hung like as a kind of vibe, so I thought I'd ask. Anyway.
Yeah, go for it. I mean,
5 seconds.
I suppose somebody asked after the show yesterday, asked me, who do you want to do it for? Who's the show for? And I suppose I've done this show in quite a few different contexts, and I work in different contexts as well. So I performed it for kind of, I suppose, more live art audiences. performed it for very theatre audiences, people, international audiences. And I suppose a question is kind of, and I think the show works in lots of different contexts. I think it works for different people for different reasons because of the kind of interdisciplinariness of it. And I suppose the question, or something maybe I'll ask, and if we have time we can talk about it now or later, is that has anybody got any advice on taking a show around that works for multiple different types of audiences and how to kind of approach that from a production angle, also from just kind of an artistic angle, and how would you navigate kind of taking the show to different audiences in different places? Cool. Yeah?
We have time for one clever answer, and that's it. Anybody wants to answer this simple question?
Miguel was was like breathing harder. I guess it's a very complicated, but also very useful question. We all question ourselves about that, I guess. You have the answer, Grant.
I'll try. Just briefly, I guess it's really hard to know how the piece of work that you're traveling with actually will resonate and how. Because we've taken our piece that we did last year to different countries, and every time people have very different reactions and things that you can't anticipate, things that you just think, oh, we never thought that that's what we intended to make, but maybe that's how people here react because of the kind of historical context or the kind of the culture that they're in. But suddenly, from my point of view, your piece, I'm French, and there was such, very kind of religious kind of references that I connected very much with my kind of like Catholic background, which I was very surprised about in England to find that, because I never feel like this is something that people engage with that much in this country because of, yeah. So, what is that? Ah, right.
Oh, Italian, am I? You're a real one. No, my dad's Irish, Italian, American. So, yeah.
But it's, yeah, that's...
Do they have? Okay, so a round of applause for Tom. Thank you very much. Let's now skip to Violent Event by Billinger and Schulz from Germany. Did I spell it correctly? Anyway, so first question as usual, something about the piece and the full-length version, and something about you, who you are, how do you work as artist, and so on.
Yes, so the piece is usually 75 minutes long. It's called Violent Event, then as well. We cut it in half, which is kind of goes with the aesthetic principles of it. And it would develop into, like a lot of things that are in the first half that you saw practically, they would develop further, and it would, some of the humor would come back, or in the end there's a big scene of dancing to kind of commands, and then as well like it's almost like 15 minutes acting out, getting out of the shape scene where there's mud everywhere, and so there's a kind of dissolution of this proposal that the show makes.
Maybe we can shortly say something about our company. We are working together as the choreographers do in Germany, Düsseldorf and Frankfurt, and we are usually working together with freelance artists, performers, dancers, musicians, video people and so on. And I think in this piece we just set the topic violence, and we think this kind of a big thing or phenomenon topic that you could deal with, which surrounds every one of us in very different ways. Like, of course, this piece is made of out of our perspective, living in Germany, the Western world, if you want to say like this, and which, of course, we are interwoven in many different discourses of violence in the world. But then there's, of course, a very physical approach with the concrete bodies that are in action doing or trying out violent acts with each other in a rather dry but also playful way, we would say. And maybe later in the piece, what was not so much there yesterday, there is also more moments of, you could say, illusion or maybe fictional moments. There was actually one moment that didn't work yesterday when Frank is there with a golden foil. He's behind the behind that curtain sheet thing, and then there should come a light, and then it looks like he's burning and screaming. So the light was not there where it should be, but then that would have been yesterday, I think, the moment which could have had a bit of a release of the situation.
About deception of illusion.
Yes, deception.
Before.
I didn't have that vocabulary here. Yeah, and then later on there is a shooting, paintball shooting. Someone is wearing a soldier's outfit, a uniform, and Sana is shooting at him. And so it's kind of developing a bit away from this, mostly two people go on stage and ask each other what they will do to each other, and then they execute it. So, it's a bit changing.
Boom, boom. Gonna break the ice once again. I'm curious about this technical aspect, because since I'm studying martial arts, and I could say that yesterday during the show you were, and that's wise, you were protecting your bones actually. All your movements were not really putting in danger your bones, at least. So I was curious to understand how you worked during rehearsals. Like, let's improvise and let's push it over and over till somebody says, no, okay, you're breaking my arm, or something like that. Or did you design it on paper like this is what's supposed to happen, so that everything was really, really safe?
I would say maybe some kind of mixture of these two things. I mean, they gave us a lot of tasks to try out. Some parts we were really improvising, but of course we were all the time really, really careful. Or some things we were doing really slow, if it's really about, twisting something, or we really had to try, how is this technically possible? Because none of us have been doing any martial arts or any kind of, so this was very new, I think, to all of us, actually, to figure out what can you actually do? So we really tried out a lot of things, and some parts were also a bit more choreographed, that there was kind of an image of what we wanted to try, and we sort of, but a lot was, I would say quite improvised first, and then we found things we sort of thought in this direction it could go, and then we set it more and more and more. So actually the first week, nobody got hurt, but I had bruises all over my body. I remember I was teaching the one evening, and I looked like, because I had just shorts and I had lots of bruises, and I thought, oh my God, my students think I had to explain what I'm doing at the moment.
Yes, I can add maybe some stuff that I usually tell in these moments. There was, something we say is like, we work on the piece from outside, or in this piece especially, we worked on it from outside, like coming with certain ideas and pictures of violence, and with them they worked on it from the inside. What can you do with your body? Like what is really possible to do, and then it got back and forth between these. And for example, we started with a lot of like dance improvisations based on principles of violence, like I don't know, holding somebody, then you kind of let the person go in a artificial movement style, and then it goes on like this, and we had like tons of tasks, but that the more aesthetical approach got kind of, it got more less and less interesting to us in the process. So the more concrete pictures or actions kind of stayed. Do you want to say the Pasolini? No. Okay. Yeah, no, there was just a general idea. I don't know, it's in the text not anymore, but there's an idea not to break anything, or to create an aesthetic effect through, for example, I'm bleeding, I'm cutting myself, like body art wise, cutting myself, and this is the aesthetic effect that we have. But the idea was kind of to throw your body into the battle, which is a Pasolini quotation, without harming it. Is it the correct? Without sacrificing it, to go to the Jesus reference. Yeah.
Any questions or thoughts or whatever you want to say about this relationship within Jesus and violence? Here you are.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of questions, I think. The first one is, I was wondering what you had presupposed about the audience when you were making the work. And then the second question is about how, does the piece have a very specific attitude or relationship to the notion of violence in society? Because maybe in the longer piece that becomes clearer, but in this kind of extract, I felt unclear what your position was in relationship to cultures of violence that we are exposed to 24 hours a day via news channels, etc., etc. So what was this piece specifically doing in relationship to that thematic?
I mean, concerning violence and society, I mean,
What
we presuppose about the audience
is about, yeah, what are you presupposing about the audience in this work? I.e., how do you want us to respond to the material that you present?
I don't know. I don't know if we presuppose things in that way. I mean, there's some idea that what we choreograph should involve the body of the audience member as well. So there's kind of this idea that there should be kind of a jump over the fourth wall somehow as a physical or affective reaction. But we don't presuppose, and actually in this piece it's very strongly so that you cannot really presuppose how each individual's attitude or experiences concerning violence are. So, for example, we think walking out the space is a very appropriate and legitimate reaction to the piece for some people. So we don't judge that. So we think, like, if you don't want to see it, you can go. We don't have a problem with that.
No, I mean, of course, we don't give any images concerning concrete things like what we are surrounded with in TV or in media or so. But for example, there's some other topics we thought about, that if we deal with violence, it's of course an approach with the body or a physical approach, but it's always also belonging to language, for example. Like, we thought a lot about that. There needs to be also language involved, speaking to each other, communicating with each other. So I think the way the performers talk to each other, it's in a way dry, but it's also in a nice way somehow. So it's, I think, something that we are surrounded a lot by, that we speak very nicely to each other, but sometimes there's also quite aggressive content in it, like a very neoliberal talking to each other. I'm very nice to you, but I really aiming on, or I'm intending to just what? Yes, impose my will onto you, like, you know. So I think it's more these kind of things that we think about rather than. Nee, dann mach.
Don't be violent, guys.
Okay, sorry. No, but the general thing is, the other thing that I thought you would say it, is that the piece kind of tries to create a relation to violence, or like if it's something that surrounds you all the time, how to deal with it other than making it an absolute taboo. And that to us, or how we work, means to kind of stay ambiguous in a way, or that we don't, I mean, that's as well, like sometimes people criticize that, that the show doesn't judge so directly, like, or that it's an amoral show in a way, like it's, it tries to postpone the judgment, even though I think what some stuff we put there, I guess when you see the whole show, you get an impression what our attitude is towards some things, and you get an impression what the show's attitude is in its struggle towards having a relation to violence somehow. So, and there's some kind of relief in the end that is, I don't know, the dancing scene here in the end doesn't convey that much. Is my impression. Like, you know.
But of course, it also depends on what you perceived or thought. Maybe, I mean, there's kind of different reactions of the audience also. Not everybody has the same feeling towards it or the same affect.
It feels like in the piece there's like almost a bar set of like severe violence and also like a real horrible kind of, it's a real horrible sort of violence and a horrible atmosphere in the room, I felt. And that for me didn't change for like the whole thing, except for there was one moment when two of the performers sort of cleaned the floor a little bit. And there was an element of like, and I noticed that I felt really hypersensitive to care at that point, and felt like really like looking really specifically for those moments. And I wondered, have you thought of, I think the piece didn't play with that as much as I would have liked it to, and I wondered if you have thought about playing with that more in terms of, in terms of the show.
I mean, maybe, but I think they are asking each other quite a lot, are you okay? Or like, for example, Patricia, who ties Sana, is also the one who's freeing her later on. And so maybe it's not so obvious, but of course this is a big thing. If you work on violence, of course also in the process or in the rehearsal process, this was a big thing. Like if a couple of hours in the day you are trying to do violent actions towards each other, in the end of the day there's big situations of massage or so. But maybe in the piece, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in the general piece, the whole evening, maybe you perceive it more. Maybe that's, for example, this moment would be then the one that triggers it in your perception, and then you see that they are taking care of each other at the same time. It was in the end of the process actually something we spoke about a lot, like this kind of weird being aggressive with each other and as well taking care of certain things. I don't know. I mean, there's one, for example, later on, quite humorous scene where it's with a baseball bat, and of course there you cannot hit somebody with a baseball bat, so you need protection. So it's all about the scene. It's all about organizing this thing. Like one small blonde performer is kind of the director, and Frank, who's not here as well, is kind of having cushions then, and the others are doing the soundscape. So there is a play with this, so, and as well with kind of then she says to him, ask somebody or go to the audience and ask them for help or so, and so there's stuff like this. But of course, I mean, the horrible side of the show is this idea that it's the show itself should be, or what we try to kind of maybe do is as well that it's a bit like a structure you cannot escape. So it's kind of a, in that sense, structural violence. So it stays, so to say. It doesn't completely dissolve.
Yeah, it's like the machinery also of the theater, like the foil that's going down and so on. Like the image of cutting in general was a big thing for us as well in the structure, in the way of choreographing or thinking about. Because if you think about performing violence, it's actually not possible because you cannot represent a violent moment in that sense, because in that moment the form will dissolve in a way. So it plays with all these kind of thoughts that this machinery going on, and it's not actually possible to grab somehow that situation. Maybe.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's well, I find it also really difficult to play, to watch, and especially now when you say it's like we represent a structural violence that you cannot escape. I find it very difficult to watch because the whole time I was thinking, God, we are in this super safe Western culture representing violence like waterboarding. We have zero idea about. And you say, we are talking about a structural violence you cannot escape, but it's a structure you are creating yourself that would not be here if you wouldn't be staging it. So for me, it made me really, really angry to watch. And it's like, wow, there are people who are actually experiencing this. It's not, I was thinking it's not cultural appropriation, it's appropriation of a violence in a victim position or something we have no clue about, and we are redoing and watching, and I find it very difficult to watch.
Yeah, for me it's the other way around actually. For me it's like we are not experiencing that, but that's done in our name all the time, you know, and practically in that sense the whole piece tries to imagine or to have a relationship to what is done in our name all the time. So, and I don't know. And as well maybe then in the audience's name all the time.
I know, but then I have the question, what does it bring to redo it again? I think that you then, it's not like this, I say, it's really a question. It's like the question, if you put something on theater, does it make that act immediately a critique? Am I making myself clear? It's like as if you put it on stage. Oh, but yeah, because we're criticizing. No, you're just reenacting. You're doing the same thing again.
No, we're not criticizing it. We're just trying to, with all possibilities that we have to, first of all, construct some kind of relationship that we don't have with it. So that's a bit the ambiguity point. That's as well you can, of course, the other actually argument that you can bring is that we are, that because you cannot really represent violence, we are showing it as something harmless in a way. That would be another, like that we are not being true to how bad it actually is, because we cannot be in the theater. So. Yeah, did I answer?
Yeah, it's getting into a debate, so let's give just one last intervention.
I was just going to say, yeah, no, I mean, you could, like, you could hurt each other. You could beat the shit out of each other on stage, and that's all I wanted to say.
Do you want to reply, or that's?
Yeah, but that's not what we're doing. So, I mean, I think it, in my opinion, it plays with this border that we are trying to walk on. That of course, it's always being crossed in a way, a little bit. But what Sebastian said, we don't want to anybody of the performers really to get hurt. And in that sense, for me, it's still, of course, in a safe theater space, which is great. We are in a protected space that we can work in. So what else do you want?
Yeah, I mean, there was always in the process as well this thing, if a real act of violence occurred, the piece would immediately be over. Practically, then we're speaking about the police coming in and the law taking over and so on. So there was with this idea.
I just think there's a long way between what you did and the police getting involved. And I think I'd support what my neighbour said here. I think for me, if the play doesn't work, and I think it doesn't, it's because you don't go far enough. You don't have to kill somebody at all, but I think it just isn't strong enough. I'm not a director, so I can't tell you how to do it. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't, and I don't want to. But I think that's the thing I would think about. You know, how is it? What can we do that really will make people think about violence? You know, scare them. Not necessarily, but make them think about it rather than just sit watching people beat each other up a bit. So that's my halfpence worth.
We're doing it a little bit.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna let you answer for the very last time, and then
I don't know.
Unfortunately, I have to stop the debate. It could last forever, and I would be glad to listen, but. You can have a fight outside if you want.
No, it's fine. I don't know. Like, we decided to walk another line. I don't know, a line where the, where the imagination of the audience still can kick in and fill out something instead of like overwhelming them with something more on the edge. Yeah, I think that's just the decision we took.
Yeah, thanks. Round of applause. It's a tricky theme, tricky argument to explore, and we don't have all the time, but we have 2 days more of the festival, right? So let's pass to the only non-violent, can I say that, piece of the night, which is Levitations by...
Apparently there are other opinions.
Yeah, I was kind of provoking you actually, but Levitations by, help me out on the pronunciation, Hannah de Meyer.
Yes, perfect.
Cool.
Perfect.
So, from Belgium.
Yeah.
Talk us about your piece and your work and yourself, please.
Yes. I'm Hannah, and I work in Antwerp, in Belgium. And Levitations is a bit of a turning point in my work, because I really wanted to make... I started out with 3 actors, by the way, which in the end, all got unfortunately fired. But it was because it was my fault in a way, because I had a lot of difficulty explaining what I wanted, because I wanted to make a piece about nothing. Really nothing, but what then do you do? Well, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. And now I realize it's, what I actually wanted to create with the audience was a sort of atmosphere of undoing your brain, and of making as much bends in the narrative and in the emotional space you move through, the time that you spend together with me, and the rest of the audience, so that your brain actually almost melts down into a lot of different images. But so when I said I want a piece about nothing, was actually that I don't want like one theme and then really push through on it or explore all the different ways of it, but just actually make a sort of, a trip. That's what I wanted to make.
Cool. So I'll start with a question. And it's about, I was really fascinated by the way you use the words and the text. And so I would like to know a little bit about the work you've made with the rhythm, because it seems really really, really studied each moment, the way you turn the rhythm, the way you turn your face. And so to me, it was like a kind of dancing with your voice. And so I would like to know something about this.
Yes, that's actually, so what I realized is that, but I think that's mostly in rituals as well, they are very structured. And even like trance or something, it comes through really super present, embodied, moving through very structured points of a trip, I think. And that's what I did, I think. And is that what you meant?
Yeah, but I mean, did you study like how rituals work and how they move through different state of emotions?
No, it's completely made up.
Okay. And how do you work on yourself? I mean, do you record yourself with a camera?
Yes. It was hell. The process to make it was really, really hell, because I was completely on my own. And so I started with filming myself, and then okay, this looks good. This like this, and then in the end, like for the last couple of days, a friend of mine came and we really set it really strictly, and then.
And did you have any reference, like visual artists or
yes,
movies or?
It's actually the way I worked on this text is really that I collected a lot of materials from just texts I like, movies, documentaries, and there are a lot of references. It's filled with references. Like for example, the woman who is is based on a documentary on Louise Bourgeois. He's the French sculptor, and she actually I think for 30 years maybe she didn't show her work to anyone. And then she really couldn't talk about it, and it was really difficult for her to talk about it. And then a journalist asked her, "Well, what is your work about? What is it? What is it? I don't know. What is it? What is it?" And it's in her studio, and she takes a sculpture, and she smashes it on the wall. And she said, "This is who I am." And I'm not going to explain it any further because it should be obvious. What other references? There is, for example, there is a very beautiful series of solace and of beauty and solace, I think it's called. It's a Dutch documentary series, and it's with, for example, there is an episode with Jane Goodall. She's investigates primates, gorillas, and she really talks about her out-of-body experiences in the jungle and stuff. So yeah, I love that kind of thing.
So,
just regarding the references, so much of it seems to be set in America and has a very kind of American feel. And I just wondered about that. I really enjoyed it, but also I remembered because doing an adaptation of an American novel, and everyone kept asking why American. Like we're so like full of these American references, and it's so annoying that we're being kind of presented these things. So I just wondered whether you had similar reactions of people kind of saying, why America? And what sort of literary references you had, because it felt very present.
So why America? Well, actually, I think it's only because of the motel in the beginning that you think of America. Because my accent, I try to talk like, is it a boy or is it a girl? But it didn't work. I don't know. I think it's influence. I had a lot of questions in the beginning about but why is it in English? And that is just because of the distance, and because language is really material for me. And Dutch, my mother language, would be like chalk. And it's really a very different material, and English is like clay. You can make very long sentences, and it fitted better with the trip. And then I think I talk in an American accent because it's like you said, we are just flooded by American English. I think it's that. Yeah.
Do you have a question for the audience about your show?
No, sorry. Ali, not to be arrogant, but
you.
Ali, no, just.
Yeah, that's easier. Not much of a question, but a reflection. I I mean, the nothingness that you mentioned, which, well, the word for me was more emptiness. Maybe it has more positive connotations, but I think it's a blessing. I think your work is very generous because it's different for each spectator, because it's building so much in his/her mind. It reminded me of The Wizard of Oz a lot. The Wizard of Oz, in a very, very, very good way. I mean, it was like a I love the movie, but this took a very, I mean, the text took a very risky, potentially, I mean, I read, sorry, many layers of meaning, and in a daringly risky way, like not trying to make sense out of it, not trying to define things, either characters, either your own portrayal of whoever it is, in a way. And well, I think I wish I could see more shows that could let me inhabit them as generously as it was yours, and the thing with your voice and with your body movements as well also were something that I had never seen before. I had not a question, but
oh no, it's okay. Also thoughts.
A sense of yeah. Basically, yeah, I loved it.
Okay, just for once, I do have a question. I was dying to know what was in the bag.
In the bag? You didn't see?
No.
It was a duck whistle. Yeah. And my mic. The microphone. Oh, sorry. It was a duck whistle, like for a hunter's whistle, and my microphone thingy. I don't know. Is that a disappointment?
And since we're making very technical questions, why the green socks?
The green
sorry,
socks.
I'm asking, but it was all black and white, like the whole show black and white, and I was pointing them that like these socks are going to do something.
Ah, great.
And they didn't.
Yeah, it's because I think maybe it gets boring after a while, so I'll give them green socks.
Any other thoughts or question? Miguel.
There was a member of the audience that left, and I asked afterwards why, and it's because she had had some experience with abuse in her life, and I wanted to know a bit how you relate to that theme in the show.
About sexual abuse?
Well, I think it's abuse in many ways.
Yes, yes. It's very important to me, and I think it's what I said about that it being a turning point was that my previous works were actually really focused on trauma and violence and abuse, and they were very they had a lot of meaning for me, and I think also for the audience, because something was through the work, something I think was liberated of that, and also something was spoken out about that, whereas it was silent and hidden and kept away before that. But the piece I did before Levitations, it was, okay, so trauma and darkness and violence is, you know, what I do, what makes a play that has weight, that has certain weight, and it was just, I realized with that play there wasn't any more something that got lifted, because it was actually past for me, this motivation to talk about violence and abuse in such a way. So I think Levitations, I think if there is any generosity in it, for me it comes from that it's really also comes from pain and from how to deal with it, but that I didn't want to make it heavy anymore or necessarily heavy anymore. So I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's it. Round of applause.
So the last work was this work about the orange of Aldes from Italy. So if you would like to present your company and the work, obviously also how it's going on.
We are the Aldes company. I'm Marco Chenevier with Sancho, Alessia, and Leah. And that's it.
What's your what's your work in?
I mean,
and how the show go on?
Let's say this creation has been done in October 2017. Was the creation with mentoring of Roberto Castello, that is the main choreographer of Aldes, and has been the piece created during the fusion between our structures, between TIDA, that was our ancient company, and Aldes, a fusion that has been began here 2 years ago in B Festival, when Roberto Castello was here with In Giro Mimus Nocte, and I was here with Quintetto. So this meeting was the turning point, the beginning of a collaboration between me and Roberto on different layers. And then during last summer, we have been the three of us in the SPAM residency for 1 month, and during this month of work, we have been working on the production with Roberto, of course, and we decided to make a fusion, a joint venture between our structures. Well, that's it. Maybe we can. I don't know if you want to say something precise about work, because I think the most important thing, the most interesting thing for us is to have feedback from you.
Okay.
It is a 1-hour show.
Yeah.
We have to say that, and so we made a 30 minutes version for B Festival that we changed yesterday morning.
Okay.
So we were like really struggling, and it was hard to make the decision to how to cut and how to give a perception, a right perception of the experience, let's say, a right experience of the show, also with half of time. So, but anyway, I'm very curious to know, well, how was the experience for the audience?
Do you have a question? We want to start with a question.
How was your experience?
How was your experience?
For me, it was very interesting because the theme was a little bit similar to Ivo Dimchev's performance theme, like manipulation and participation, and but it was really different, like in a way that it was very playful, and it was like the audience had the chance to protest, or no, it wasn't a real chance. So it was also like participating. Almost all the audience, all of them were like trying to do something, protest or participate or have a role. But after then, it became obvious that there is no chance against the system. So it was also a little bit like having the responsibility, but also a little bit playfully, like not so much heavy, like, okay, you participated, you have your little sugar thing at the end and so on, but it was also a little bit playful and not so heavy for me.
Who saw the show yesterday in the circle? Yeah, you? Okay. Okay.
For me, I saw Quintetto. So I consider like this is the side B of that piece, because in that...
It is, definitely.
Yeah, and it's very nice to see, because the other is like, both of them are part of how community works. But in that case, it's like how community can create something beautiful, or something like it was like happy end and happy all the time, you know? And in this case, it's like how we create violence just by being there. I found it like very sociological in many ways, and it was very interesting to see here in B when people has left the venues in other situations. So if Holocaust was mentioned, somebody left. If I don't know, with your piece, somebody left. But in your piece, nobody left because of this playful situation. And that was tricky because I want to know actually, how do you perceive the audience in terms of you are manipulating, but at the same time, how do you perceive the audience reaction, or how it's been since October that you performed it? Because here, the people who believe that they are against, like they are like, okay, I'm gonna throw the oranges, or I'm gonna do the plane, but they are not actually being against. To be against, you should do something else, to say like, let's stop this, or I will go out. But they are like, no, I'm here and I am playing with the game. So all of us, we are part of the same. But the people who are doing that, they feel that they can judge the people who decide to squeeze the orange. So it's a whole system of how society works, actually, and the way that you presented, it's very clever, and exactly like in relationship for me with Quinteto. But I would like to know more, how do you perceive this? How did you manage to set up this dispositive, this stage, dispositive, to make this like mini microcosmos of how society works?
Well, I think we also have to ask to Alessia how she perceived the audience after. But of course there are these 2 points that are quite important to me. From a side there is this spectacular layer. So his dance is beautiful, it's entertaining, but with that we are talking about something that it's tricky, of course. On the other side, I have to say that the reaction is very often very different. So even in Italy, in different towns, we noticed, and we are writing down all the results of each show with a different degree of violence of every venue and every town. And so it's very, very different. Now, this is the second time in a foreign country. I've been in Romania. It was completely different. That they were completely afraid. Well, they couldn't accept money in front of the others, and they couldn't do bad things on people. They couldn't. I mean, they couldn't show to be bad in front of the audience. While in Italy, they have fun to showing that they are bad, and in England a little bit also. And so it depends from the reaction of the audience, of course. And in Italy, many times the torture have been interrupted, but of course going out from the rules. While we did imagine that here would happen that no one would step out from the rules, because there is a real different relationship with the rule. But this is the trap, I mean, because we give quite stupid rules, as sometimes rules are, and we accept them and we play with the rules until the end. So this is. So we perceive the audience differently depending from their reaction, actually. So how do you perceive the audience, Alessia?
Yeah, every time is different, but normally at the end, really at the end, when like we do the last movement, I'm like, I'm hating you, like I hate everybody. But it's just a feeling, after 2 seconds it's gone, because I'm there and I know that it can happen. So it's a human reaction, just like, fuck. But I mean, I know that everybody can do different things, and actually I was talking to him and I told him it's very strange, because at this point, after having done something like 12 maybe representation, I would like not to know the show and to be part of the audience, because I don't know what can be my reaction if I was at your place. So of course I cannot judge anybody, because I mean, me in the first person, I don't know. So I'm just notice actually what is happening. I'm really surprised sometimes
there are like patterns that are repeating, but it's more about like observing, I can say. Yeah. But yeah, there is not really judgment because, I'm not in your place, so I cannot really judge you, but sometimes I like, wow, did you do that? Or for example, yesterday night was really strange because at the beginning, I saw that everybody was like coming to squeeze the orange, but nobody was doing nothing to interrupt the scene, and he started to block me. I was like, why do you want to come to do a violent action and you didn't think that maybe there is the possibility to stop something that can be bad? So, but after, in a moment I stopped to think because a lot of things are happening and I cannot see. So I'm really like, just at the end I realized what happened. And sometimes they told me because I don't know actually, the glass broken or people fall down. I was like, really?
I'd like to make a question on behalf of someone who is shy to make the question. So the question is not her. Someone who's not here. The question is why, because at some point you inflict, or there is a potential of inflicting pain into a member of the audience, and why for the torture you decide to go back to one of you? Because going back to one of you, it feels safe somehow, and therefore the situation is put as, because we've gone to the point of having a real audience member there, and then going back to one of you suddenly feels much safer. So why have you made that decision?
Well, the first thing is that we are not asking to do something mean on the audience. We just give the opportunity to people of the audience to interact. It's their choice to do what they want. For example, in Romania, he gave him a caress, and there.
You are also putting a lot of, you are setting up the fact that they can throw milk on them. You only say you can't, like you are kind of manipulating the response of them somehow.
Yeah, that's the trap we are building up, of course. I mean, in the progression of this scene, before the two person, there is just one. We ask just one person to come in the swimming pool, and of course, this is an act of courage that we ask to the audience because they imagine that we will do something with this milk and so, and we don't do anything. Then we ask a second one, and we don't do anything with that. And then we ask a third and a fourth, and we give them the possibility. So there is the example of there is all this stuff, and we don't use it. You can use it, but there is not the only way. So this step is a little bit missing. To come back on us is just because, I mean, there is an idea of being, for us, being artists is just to be a tool at disposal of an artistic process. This is how I perceive the being artist. So in order to underline this way of being on the stage, so not someone who has the truth or someone who is good or someone who is a good dancer, but just someone who is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. We want to put the audience before and say, okay, this is what can happen to someone here. And then we do it. So now it's your choice. What do you want to do? Is to underline more the empathy, actually, with Alessia. What we wanted to do in the last scene is to create a big empathy with Alessia, and that's why she is the one as tortured. Because, of course, if I was in the swimming pool, it would be a little bit less nasty. I mean,
why not an audience member in the swimming pool?
Because why not? Well, we do it before, actually. We do it twice with audience members. Then all the torture is done on Alessia because she is the tool. The audience is not a tool. The audience can become a tool if they want, but it's their decision. And it's our decision to make this symbolic scene. Then what do you want to do with this symbolic scene? Do you want to watch it? Do you want to stop it? Do you want to participate it? It's your decision. And how do you want to stop it? We give you ways to stop it. Is it the only way to stop it? This is the question. So how in conventions we are, how comfortable we are with these conventions. We don't have to step the stage. We don't have to do that. We don't have, these are conventions. Why we accept these conventions? And what are the power relationship in these conventions? Because there are power relationships in these conventions. Also doing anything, even something very contemporary. The most contemporary thing you can imagine, you put it on stage with an audience. Anyway, you build up again a power relationship that has more than 3,000 years. So, working on that, we can maybe find other ways to underline these power relationships. Not to invent new ones, but just to put them in light.
Yeah, Sergio, last question, please.
I like the change of rhythm in the show quite a lot. There's a very long interlude in which you pour milk in buckets and then ice, and I perceived that each time you were adding more ice in each bucket, which made for a long scene, which I liked a lot because it seemed very ritualistic to me, and I wanted to know what might have been for you the purpose of that, or if you were trying to work specifically with those changes, because sometimes the scenes where some kind of torture is displayed are very quick, are very frantic, and that was like quite a change.
Well, yes, there are many rhythm changes. There is a structure with a different emptiness and fullness of scenes. Of course, with the reduction, we made different choices. We tried anyway to recreate these changes, the repetitions, and this moment of development of different torture of scenes. Let's say that the rhythm is just a tool for us to have the attention of the audience. I mean, for us it's very important to keep the audience awake, to keep the audience with us, and to go together somewhere. So the rhythm is just a tool for that. And we try to play with this, and in order to make a trip together, try not to be boring, actually.
Okay, I think we have a very last question here. I know, but
this is just it's more of a statement or just a bit of feedback. When you were talking, I think Alessia, when you were talking about it being, you were surprised or you get upset that the audience would squeeze orange in your eyes. To me, all the things that you asked to do were, they felt safe to me as a audience member. I would have had no problem asking you to drink milk. I didn't know whether you were really lactose intolerant, but you want to do it, so I'll watch you do it, you know, that's okay. And you want to have orange juice poured in your eyes, so okay, I'll pour orange juice in your eyes. There was nothing that if it was something visibly really painful that you were asking to do, like something that we could see that would be, you know, could give you a lifelong injury, then I would be the first to interrupt and say, stop. So I'm not sure, perhaps the things that you were doing were not dangerous enough, and perhaps you couldn't do something that dangerous because you might have a psychopath in the audience that would really inflict something horrible on you. And it's a little bit like the Milgram experiment, you know, the Stanley Milgram, pushing people to keep delivering more and more pain under certain circumstances. And I think that in your situation, it's even more safe than that experiment. I would have been a person that would stop, I think, in the Milgram experiment, but in your one, it's fine, it's just orange juice, or it might be mildly painful, but. So I was surprised to hear that you would have a negative reaction to people that would make you do something that you'd... it's not a criticism, it's just interesting that...
No, but I mean, of the beginning of the scene, we told that it's a symbolic scene. So if it's very important to remember this point. Actually, it's symbolic, but of course, something real is happening, and I can assure you that, I mean, we can try, but orange in the eyes, it's not really the best thing you can have in your day. And the water, I mean, the milk with the ice, it's very, very cold. So even if the theater was quite not so cold, but it's really not pleasant. And anyway, it's even that this image, it's symbolic, but and the perception is real. I mean, somebody is doing something that it's not supposed to be good to me. So that's why my feeling, my first feeling is like, I hate you. And after it goes. But also, yes, I mean, to go further, we tried actually also to do something really, but I mean, it was not the point for us. It's a symbol, and after, anyway, you see that a girl is being tortured. Even if it's not the most horrible torture, it's not the point. The point is, do you want to do anything to save her? Maybe for you it's just, okay, it's a game and it's enough. It's an answer, of course. Yeah.
Okay, Daniela, do you still have a question or you don't? No, you don't. Great. So we are going to end this feedback cafe the same way we ended it yesterday. A round of applause for Aldes. And as you can prepare yourselves, guys. And as I said yesterday, since in the B Festival they're giving prizes, but you might not get any prize. Of course, we hope you'll get all of them, but to be sure that at least you go home with something, we'd love to give you our special prizes. And so I'll let the mic to our friends and actors, Lorenza and Daniele.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first edition of the Feedback Cafe Awards, presented by Daniele Pennati and Lorenza Guerrini.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here this afternoon presenting such an unimportant award.
So, let's start with the first award of the day. For finding original ways to use daily life objects, towels, bottle and plastic bags, the award for the best basket lesson goes to Violent Event by Billinger and Schultz.
Woo! Give it up! Ecco. Qual è? Here, there is your award, homemade award. Enjoy
Organic.
your cup. Smile to the audience. Thank you. Give it up, an applause. Thank you. The second prize.
Yeah. It's yours.
Yeah, you have to play the music.
Sorry.
For the originality in mixing theatrical ingredients, the award for the best human orange milkshake goes to this work about the orange by Aldes. Where is? Okay, thank you. Enjoy your award, Alessia. Thank you. Compliment, Alessia. Okay, thank you. So we have to go on. Let's go. Lorenza, dai. Quickly. Quick.
Now the next award.
Third. Okay. Lorenza, the music. For the capacity of taking care of plant while torturing a human being. The award for the best gardening skills goes to Someone Loves You, Drive With Care by Tom Cassani. Come on. Yeah. Okay. Gardening Skills Award. Thank you. Enjoy your cup. Compliments. Then the last award.
Last award, yeah.
It's yours.
It's mine.
Tum. 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 Tum.
For the capacity of getting yourself and everybody else into a trip without any actual drug. The award for the best free drugs dealer goes to Levitation by Hannah de Meyer.
Give it up! Yeah. Your award, compliment. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
And the Feedback Cafe is over.